In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the brute force using Python. So I'm going to go ahead and write a Python program that is going to allow to do brute forcing of a certain password list, right? So let's jump right in. And before I actually start writing the program, let me show you a couple of things, right? So we need a password list. You can download it from the internet, or you can create your own password list. Just a simple text file that contains a bunch of passwords, because when you want to brute force something, it's going to check on each of those passwords before it can actually identify the weakness here. So as a penetration tester, you need to have the text file which contains all the passwords, and of course once we write the program, we'll execute the program and see how it works. So let's go ahead and open up our editor. So here's the Wing IDE for Python, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a new file. It's already created, so I'm just going to go ahead and start my program actually. So we need to import a couple of modules, right? So let's do import our first module, which is px_ssh, and what this class does basically extends the pexspec, right, to specialize setting up the SSH connections to the shell. And this adds method also for login, logout, and expecting the shell prompt. So that's why we need to use this particular module. Next, I'm going to go ahead and use the opt parse. So it will be import opt parse. That's for our parsing. Then I'm going to go ahead and use the time. That's pretty straightforward. And then of course our threading as well. I'm going to go ahead and import everything. So next I'm going to go ahead and define our connections. Okay, so let's say maximum or max connections. I'm going to set this to 5, and then the connection lock is going to be equal to our bounded semaphore, right? So we use semaphores, by the way, just so you know. It's simply a thread synchronization, right, construct that can be used either to send the signals between threads so that we can avoid the missed signals, right? Now the reason why we use the semaphore is, think of that as to guard a critical section, like you would with a lock, for example. Since we're using these locks, we want to make sure these are well guarded. So once I set the connections to 5, and the connection lock is going to be equal to our bounded semaphore, and then I'm going to set the value equals to max connections, and if found, I'm going to set this to false, and if it fails, I'm going to set this to 0. Okay, so the preliminary aspect is done for the program. Now we need to create our definitions, right? For the connect, for example, that's where I'm going to start. So let's go ahead and do def connect, and here I'm going to specify the parameters, right? So for example, you want to connect to the host, username, password, and so on, right? So let's do host, comma, user, and then password, and then release, place a colon. Let's do a global found, and then also the global for fails. And then it's going to go ahead and try, set some variables. So variable s equals pxx or px ssh. SSH again, that's the method. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the login method. So s.login, and use host, comma, user, comma, password. Those 3 things will be required. And then let's go ahead and do a print, and then use the plus sign within the set of brackets. And if the password is found, colon, I'm going to concatenate this with the password. Now once I'm done with setting up the print command, I'm going to set the found to be true. So this is going to be true with lowercase. And then of course I need the except, right? So except or exception as E, for example, and then do a condition. So if read, let's say non-blocking in string E, colon, go ahead and do the fails plus equals to 1. And then the time to sleep, for example, the wait time will be about 5. You can set this to any. And then let's go ahead and do the connect. So connect to my host, user, and then password, same parameters. And use the false. elif, that's my next condition, so I'm going to use elif. Go ahead and synchronize, so I'm going to use ch or CRO rather with original prompt. And you can do this, we're going to do this in the string E or STRE, colon, and then I'm going to go ahead and use the time.sleep, set this to the same time as above. Well, maybe it'll reduce it, right? Because we have 5 up, so I'm going to use maybe 1 second here. Now, once I'm done with this, I'm going to go ahead and also specify the connect again. So let's do connect, host username, password, and then I'm going to set this to false, same as above. And then let's go ahead and do finally, okay, if release, and then use the connection lock. So connection underscore lock and use the release method. Okay, so if everything works well, then it's going to release the lock. And that's a method. So we're done with our first definition here. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do the def main. So let's do def main colon, and here I'm going to use parsers, right? So let's scroll down, start with our parser equals opt parse dot option parser, and the usage here is going to be, for example, let's open the parentheses, usage, and then %, I'm going to use prog, and set this to host, because we would like the user to specify once they run this program, once we're done with this, and they're going to run this program, they'll be prompted to enter a host, right? So if they want to brute force something, they want to enter host. So it'll be localhost or an IP address and so on. So this will be, let's say, the -h, and then my target host is what this will do. And then I'm also going to specify -u, for example, for the user, and then also the password list, right? Because we need the password list so it can go out there and try to use each one of those passwords within that list. So I'm going to use the -f, and this is going to be for the password list. Great. So once I'm done with this, I'm going to go ahead and use the parser add. So let's go ahead and do parser dot add option underscore option. Open the parentheses, and here I'm going to specify -h, comma, and that's for my target host, by the way, and the destination equals the target host. So this will be DEST, and then I'm going to first fix the syntax here. So this goes here, remove the apostrophe, and then right after the destination is TGT host. So that's TGT host here. And then I'm going to go ahead and close the quotation, put a comma. The type is going to be, let's say, string, because that's just text we're going to enter. So that's just string. And then I'm also going to use, after the comma, let's say help equals, and then specify target host. So this is helpful for users who are using this program, right? So just go ahead and do specify target host. So once that's done, my next parser add option, so parser dot add underscore option, this is going to be for the -f, or the password file, and then of course we're going to do this for the user also. So same things. Let's first go ahead and do the correction of the syntax, and then let's begin our add option for, let's say, the -f or -f, and then this is going to be for the destination equals, and then I'm looking for the password, right? So it's pass wd and then file, comma, the type here equals string, same thing, and then of course help, I can specify something like specify password file, right? So comma help equals, and I'm going to go ahead and say specify password file, and let's go ahead and fix the syntax quick. It should be an apostrophe instead of a quotation. Okay, all right, so let me go ahead and fix the top here also, just some quick fixes as we go along. Perfect. So once our syntax has been corrected, let's move on to the user, right? So parser dot add underscore option, and this is going to be for our -u, comma, and then the destination here is going to be equals to user, and then of course I need to specify the type also. So after the quotations, comma, and the type, same syntax as above, right? So this is going to equal to, let's say, string, and then I'm going to put a comma, and then of course the help, of course, equals specify the user, right? So let's go ahead and do the specify the user text. Great. So I'm done so far with the parsers, right? Next, I'm going to go ahead and, of course, set the variables as well. But before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and do options, set the arguments, and then this is going to equal to our parser parse arguments. So, and then dot parse underscore args method. Great. Now I'm going to go ahead and do host equals our options dot tgt host. That's with a capital H, so we don't make the syntax errors. And then the password, which is passwd file, right? That's what I spelled above. This is going to equal options dot password file. Great. And then finally, the user is going to equal to options dot user. Perfect. Now I'm going to do the if condition, right? So let's go ahead and do if host equals none, or the password file equals none, right? Or the user equals none. So I'm just going to make sure I check each of these: host, user, and password file. Or password file equals none. And keep this in mind, by the way, I'm spelling the password as PASSWD file, right? So even though I say a password, it's spelled differently. So keep that in mind. All right, so if password file equals none, or the user equals none, colon, what should we do? We are going to go ahead and print the parser usage. So parser.usage, and then exit. Okay, open the parentheses, and then 0.